All right. So hopefully today is going. What you're going to do is this is going to be for grade. Okay. You're going to need to fill this out with me today. You're going to need to turn this in. We still got. This looks like it's going to turn into a 2-day thing. Just barely got this covered just with my first class. Okay. We'll see if we can get through all of the front at least, and then next class we'll just have the back to do. Okay. So right now you essentially just have a drawing. It's kind of like this. It's kind of a. It's got the shapes all doing the right thing. Going to the linear perspective, creating these forms in space, right? But it's just kind of an empty shell. Okay. Um, in order to really pull this off now, we got to give it value in terms of a light source, give it light and dark, to really make this look like it's in light and shadow, because we see our world in value in lights and darks. But we also see our world in color, okay? So we're going to do this in color as well. So today is hopefully going to really, I'm going to give you a certain criteria of how you're going to have to color this, okay? And some of this is hopefully will be very enlightening to you in terms of how to mix color, okay? I personally have a little color blindness, okay? So this is something very important to me, as an artist. It was something that's sort of a stigma, oh, I'm colorblind. I'm going to go into art school, I'm colorblind. I tell students I'm colorblind. They're like, what? Colorblind is an art teacher? Yeah, I have a little color blindness, okay? And this really in kind of the blue-purple kind of range, okay? Because they're very similar, you know. They both have blue in them, but I get a little have a little hard time seeing the warmth sometimes in the purple, okay? Particularly when I've seen them like separate. I associate a dark and kind of blue almost like a purple sometimes, But when I start to see it kind of in a lighter form, that kind of warmth starts to appear, and I can kind of see it a little better. So I've gotten to where I can really hone in on things, right? Kind of figure them out. And the big deal with it, really, when it all boils down to it, is can you mix your colors? Okay, I can take colors that I can see from anywhere, and I can mix that color and match it. Okay, and a lot of it all comes down to the little secrets I'm going to give you today. Okay, there's a big one. Okay, all right. All right, so let's get back to basics, okay? Let's talk about basics, and then we'll talk into these kind of big ideas, okay? All right. So this is nothing new to you, probably, the color wheel, okay? So what is this solid triangle? What is that? What does that represent? The solid triangle. What is that solid triangle versus the dotted triangle? What does that solid triangle represent? Primary color. So you're going to need a pencil for this. I want you to write along this line, primary, for primary colors. Okay? So write the word primary on there. All right. Now what is this dotted triangle? What does that represent? Secondary. So let's write the word secondary on there. That's our secondary colors. Okay, so what are our primary colors? What are our primary colors? Yeah, typically yellow kind of goes on top, blue on the right. Don't know why necessarily, but it's just how I usually see it. And so so label this, okay, as I'm labeling it. So what does yellow and red make? What does yellow and red make? Orange. What does red and blue make? sometimes violet. And what does yellow and blue make? Green. All right. So we've essentially established one of our four properties of color. Okay. I want you to write this down. Hue is our first property of color. Okay? Hue. H-U-E, hue. Sometimes you see the word chroma. Chroma also means color. All right? So color, we agree all these are colors. But they're colors, meaning they're different colors. So yellow, the fact that yellow is yellow is its first property, okay? The fact that orange is orange is its first property, okay? So whenever we select our colors, generally we're trying to select a certain color, so that is its first property. We're talking about properties of color, okay? So let's do this. Let's just kind of fill this out real quick. And you're going to have to share with the color pencils across the table with you. You take this in any order. Now, I'm not going to be real neat about this. I'm just going to fill in. Doesn't mean if I have to color to the lines. Just filling in these colors, okay? I am pressing down on it. Get it dark and saturated. Get it really saturated. Okay. All right. So, we're going to go ahead and get into what is the most important property here. Well, let's go ahead and take this kind of in order. And the second property, which we'll talk more about here in a minute, which is value. Okay. I think some of you are still working on the color wheel. You don't have to be real neat about it. As long as you get press down hard on the color pencil, make it kind of a fully saturated color. Okay. So another important thing about color is value. Okay. So that is the other property I want you to write down. This is four properties. Our second property is value. Now I'm going to show you a little something here. Okay. I'm going to pull my phone out. I'm going to turn on my camera. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to where it's just all black and white. Okay? So look at what you're seeing here. Okay? So I'm going to take a picture of this. Okay? So notice this. Okay? Where did our yellow go? Why is the yellow showing up? What do you think? What is value? What does value mean? What does value mean? Black and white? Like, what's that? How dark or light something is. So what this pretty much tells us, that yellow is still there. We can barely see a little something registering there. That means yellow is a light color. But that's yellow. I mean, yellow is yellow. So what that means for like orange is a little lighter, but God, look at that green, blue, purple, and red. They're almost black. They're dark. Those are some dark colors. Okay? All right? So color, a property of color is it has value. And they're not equal value. You know, they might be equal in something else, which we're getting ready to talk about. Okay? Which is our next one. Okay? This is the big one. Intensity. 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 Okay? So what do you think intensity means? What does intensity mean? What color? And we're talking about color. Okay, let's not talk about color. Let's just talk about the word intense. What's generally what you think of when you think of intense? Like, maybe, huh? What's that again? Right, bold, very bold, right? Very energetic, right? So what do you think would be the opposite of intense? So what would be the opposite of strong? Weak. What would be the opposite of bold? Right? So, okay, so intensity can be two different things, okay, in color. Okay, it can be bright or it can be dull. Okay, so color can be either bright or dull. Okay, so think about it. These are the colors of everything we see. Okay, these are the colors. Is everything those colors? No. Maybe in a kid's room. Maybe in a kid's room with their toy box. Maybe everything's that bright. I certainly don't wear anything like that every day in my clothes. I don't see anybody in here necessarily that bright, necessarily. Okay, so what does that tell us? The colors generally that we use are what? Bright or dull? Huh? What are these? Are they bright or dull? They're bright, okay? B-R with a capital. Bright. They're almost like screaming at you, okay? Can't get no brighter. It's as bright as it's going to get. I can't make a yellow any brighter than that. I can't make a green any greener than that. I can't make a blue any bluer than that. I can't make a purple any. So colors, as we know, are very bright, okay? Very saturated, very intense, okay? And that is the generic colors of what we see. Now, there's an important word there, okay? This is another way to describe this. Generic. Bland. Okay? Okay, it's very lively. Okay, but if I had to look at those colors all day, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like overload, right? It'd be like too much, right? And so let's think about it. Think about music. What if you turn the treble all the way up on your music? What if you turn the bass all the way up on your music? What if you wrote everything? What if everybody sent you a text in all caps all the time? Wouldn't it just be just overly, just like, my goodness? It's just to bring it down a little bit, okay? All right? And see, that's the problem, okay? Generally, when you ask someone to color things, this is what they color them, generally. And that's generic, and it's also kind of bland. So, you know, whenever you want to make your color a little more sophisticated, a little calmer, a little bit more natural. This is truly like unnatural. Our world does not look like that. Okay, our world doesn't look like that. Okay, so all right. So what do we do? Because really, the thing is, um, you know, okay, we can use brown, we can use gray, but we can also mix these colors into duller versions of themselves. Okay, and that's the big thing I need to talk to you about. Okay, all right. So how do we dull these colors? Where do we? This is the important word. Okay, that we want to focus on is how do we dull colors? How do we make them less bright, less intense? Okay. All right. So let's focus on something here. We have created a relationship by putting them in a wheel right here, okay? We've created a relationship. So when I say opposite, okay, there are colors that are opposite from each other. What are some colors that are opposite from each other on this color wheel? Anybody know? I mean, just by looking at this, what are some colors that are opposite? Pick two. Two colors are opposite from each other. Blue and orange. So what that means is they are like so far apart, they are unrelated. It means they will counteract one another. Okay? There's a word for that. They are complements. Okay? So right beside complements, right opposite. Okay, they're opposite. Okay? They're opposite. So what do you think will happen if we mix those colors together? What do you think will happen? Think they'll get brighter? No. They're going to get duller. Okay? So dull when mixed. Okay? And that's it. There you go. There's the big secret. It's out now. You don't have to go to art school no more. You're done. You know how to mix colors now. Okay? Mix those colors across from each other. Okay? That's how you're going to make colors more in tune with what we see in the world. Okay? That's how you're going to create more sophistication in your colors, is by doing that. Okay? Now, they don't have to be complete opposites. Okay? And we're getting ready to experiment with this. Okay? So what do you think of, okay, if I was going to mix blue and orange together, what's something close to blue that would also mix in with orange? I'll just go ahead and tell you. Purple has blue in it, right? Purple has blue in it. Do you think that'll dull down on orange? It will. Green has blue in it. That's also opposite of orange, right? But green also has yellow in it, so it's not completely opposite. Orange has red in it, which also purple has red in it. So that's not going to get you a complete opposite, but it will dull down the color. It will dull it down, okay? Purple will dull it down, green will dull it down. But blue is the complete opposite. So it doesn't have to be the exact opposite, okay? So, so whenever, flesh colors, I was helping a student mix a flesh color the other day. And all they had was red, yellow, and blue. That's all they had. I helped them make a flesh color, okay? So, these are all the colors pretty much we see in the world. It's just some mixture of those that we truly see most of the time, okay? So you have to learn how to desaturate these colors. And I know it's extreme. Right now it's on one extreme of the end. They're completely as bright as they can be. But then you just have to start to slowly desaturate those colors, okay? And then we're going to experiment with that, okay? All right, so let's make a desaturated yellow, okay? First of all, let's take a look at this. I do this with my Painting 1 students, okay? What color is this pear, generically? What color is it? What's that, yellow? This generic quality is yellow, right? Most of the time when I have students paint that, that's how bright they'll paint it, okay? But in order to make this shadow color, what's the opposite of yellow? Purple. Do you see purple in this? I wouldn't think to use purple to make this pear, but that is what that is. I took purple and added yellow to make this shadow color, okay? So, okay? All right, so let's make a dull yellow, okay? So let's take a little bit of yellow and put it out here to the side. Now, when I mix colors, this is how I do it, okay, with color pencil. I put down a very, very pale light version of the color. I don't go full saturated because that won't mix well, because all that does is clog up the paper, okay, it just clogs it up. So I want to put down a very light coating, okay. Now I'm going to take purple, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a very, 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 very light bit of purple on top. I don't mean a lot, I mean just a very tad, until I start to get it really kind of dingy looking, kind of like that. Now, I'm going to go back with my yellow, and I'm going to start to then kind of layer the yellow back on top, bring it back to yellow a little bit more. And plus what that'll do, that'll kind of sandwich them together, and then it'll kind of mix it in, okay? Now, I really dulled that one down. It only takes a little bit to dull down yellow. It only takes a little bit. So I can try to maybe bring a little bit more yellow into that. But you can see that's a dirty yellow, okay? It's a yellow, but it's a dirty one. Now there is a color for that called yellow ochre. Sometimes you'll see them in color pencils, like a yellow ochre color. And that's kind of the color that you see there, okay? So that is a much more calmer, okay? It's not as bright, it's a little more calm. Now I want you to do this too, okay? I want you all to follow along. We're going to do this with all these colors, okay? So now let's do green. I'm going to put down a very, very light coating of green. do this in a very kind of subtle approach works best, I find. So I got a very light coating of green. Opposite of green is red. I'll take a little bit of red, just a little bit. Put a very light coating on there. Then go back with green on top. Kind of mix it in a little bit. If I want to dull it down a little bit more, I might add a little more red. And there you go. I got a dull version of green. Okay. So keep going. I'm going to do the blue now. I'm going to do this to all of them. Add just a little bit of orange. Now, why are we doing this? What's so important? Take a look over here. I put underlined must mix. When you go to color your picture in, I don't want to see any plain, straight yellow or orange or green or blue without mixing, okay? You're going to have to mix. Any color you put down on this, it's going to need some other color in it, okay? Anytime you put a color on your drawing, it's going to have some other color in it, okay? It can't be a pure color, all right? And those shadow colors, you know, we're going to try to do this with like light and shadow. Now, your shadow colors are the dull colors. Where's the bright color in this pair? Where do y'all see a bright color? Where's the bright color at? What's that? Is that about right here? Yeah. Now notice where that is. It's not in the light area right here. And it's not in the shadow area. Bright color occurs in between light and shadow. Okay? Light will wash out something. Okay? Shadow will desaturate. Where you see bright colors, generically in the light area next to it. Okay? That's where you'll see your more saturated color. Okay? All right, so let's do our purple. Now some colors are much more influenced than other colors, like the yellow for instance. You know, that yellow, all it took was just a little bit of purple in that to really make a big difference. Whereas I put a little bit of yellow into this purple and it's not making a lot of difference. You know, it takes a little more yellow to put into it to really make a difference. So some colors are a little more powerful than others in terms of how they act. And that's just something you gain with experience. How much of one will mix with another to get the results you want. I just messed up. One thinking. Looks like I'm mixing blue green with my red. All right. So there's our dirty wheel. We'll just call that our dirty wheel. Okay. We got our not so bright. Okay. It's no longer in caps anymore. Okay. These are a little more serene. Now there's also a spatial thing that's going on. Okay. When we're trying to do this, we're trying to create the illusion of space, right? Depth, right? This is a flat surface. We're trying to give it the illusion of depth. There's something also with color that's involved in that. Which colors jump out at you, the bright ones or the dull ones? I mean, that grab your attention, that seem to advance. They're not really coming out at you, but which ones grab your attention? Which ones do you think grab your attention? The bright or dull ones? Which one? The bright ones. So the dull ones actually kind of recede. They're not actually going anywhere. Okay, now think about this. If you go out somewhere where you can see far, far distance, what happens to those colors off in the far, far distance? It's called atmospheric perspective. Do they turn kind of blue, kind of gray, washed out, desaturated? So colors that are things, objects that are closest to us in nature, generally are brighter, darker, lighter. Things that are off in the distance have less contrast. They're more related. They're kind of all mixed in together, more washed out, duller. Okay? Things off in the distance. So these are all properties that you can work with color. You can use it to kind of create depth, right? To make things seem to be closer or further away. And to give you more illusion of light and shadow. Okay? So these would be colors that generally, you would see just a little bit. So in nature, generally, there's a small amount of saturated color. Dominantly, we're looking at these kind of duller colors, okay, most of the time in nature, okay? And that's what my big lesson is on color, okay? All right? So from here on out, we're going to work more with, in terms of how it is you're going to color this, okay? So let's do this. You can use a pencil, or you can use a black color pencil to do this, okay? So you need a pencil or a black color pencil, either one. I'm going to use the black color pencil. There's only one black at your table across from each other, so one could use black, one use the pencil. Now we're not going to use white in this drawing. Okay, we're not going to leave any kind of blank white. So our first value is actually on this value scale, which is what we're going to do. We're actually going to make a very, very, very light, the lightest value we can make, which is not white, but close to it. In order to do that, I just have to barely touch the paper. Okay, it's no longer white, but it's not dark either. It's light. Okay. Now for the second value, I'm going to go just a touch darker. Maybe something like that. It's different than number one. It's just a tad bit darker. Now for our third value, I'll go just a little bit darker on that one. Okay, almost getting a little too dark. think that's going to be okay. Now I want to get next to my darkest. Now we'll basically try to go to black on the last one. So this one can actually be pretty dark. All I'm doing is pressing down a little harder. I'm also trying to fill it in so I don't have a lot of gaps and spaces in between my marks. And lastly, I want to go really dark. Press down really hard. Hopefully get this darkened in. Now value is what really creates space in our world mostly, okay? Now it looks like my value number 4 might could be just a little adjusted darker. Now that I got that black in there, I can compare them together. I might could even adjust value number 3 just a touch more. So now I have a really nice step from one value to the next, okay? Now they say value does all the work, but color gets all the credit in terms of, how we see our world and in art, in terms of creating space and spatial contrast. So value is what's going to be predominant through our whole drawing, okay, when we go to do this, okay? So let me show you an example of that, just so you can kind of see. I got an example in here somewhere. All right, so that, okay? So y'all see that right there? All right, so eventually this is where we're going with this. We're going to put color in it, but I want you to see how important value is. Value is tremendously important, okay? It is the predominant thing we're going to have to stick to when we do our drawing, okay? So you see I've numbered this, and which I'll talk to you more about next class. So what we're going to do now is find colors that we can use within these different areas. We've already established, that, in our shadow areas, we need to have dull shadow colors, right? Our brighter colors are going to occur kind of in our lighter areas, okay? So we're going to experiment and now adjust this value scale in colors. How can we apply what we've learned in terms of making dull colors and now in creating different values so that then we can create the forms out of our shapes, okay, that we want to make, okay? All right. Now you see the first two have an X under, okay? Now, and the other ones have a check beside them. Now, notice it says pure color, right? And this says by adding black, we're actually going to add a little black to this one too. Actually, we'll probably do yellow in this one. I kind of found that out from last class. But these are what you're not going to want to do, okay? These are okay, but this one is the best one, okay? I'm going to talk about that when we finally get to it, okay? But these, nah, these, okay, but this one is the best one, okay? Which is really the complements, okay? All right? So let's do the pure color. Let's see what not to do, okay, for this. All right, pick any color, doesn't matter the color, as long as it's one of the ones from the primary or secondaries. It could be any of these colors right here. Can't be brown, can't be gray, can't be, but it's got to be either yellow, purple, orange or blue, red or green, okay? I'm going to use orange, okay? Now my orange is getting pretty dull, Okay, you can see how that is. There's kind of a problem with that. Okay. Notice what I've got down here. Okay. Y'all notice this right here? You know, paper has kind of a tooth to it. Okay. Some papers are really smooth, like think of like magazine paper. You ever tried to use pencil on magazine paper? It don't work. Okay, it's because it doesn't have a tooth to it. It's too slick. This paper, you know, this printer paper, has a little bit of tooth to it. And what it is kind of, if you got a really close look at it, it's just a little bit of texture to it. Okay. So if you take really dull color pencils and try to color, you see I've got this kind of dark and then little spaces. You'll get that kind of effect where things look very grainy, you know, very speckled. You start to see it kind of like right here is kind of grainy, kind of speckled, right? That's because the pencil being so dull, it can't really get down those crevices. Sometimes what I'll do, I start to get a dull pencil, I'll flip it over and use the more pointed end. But eventually then it turns into something like this, right? But then I kind of can start over and resharpen. And what you'll do with that is you can get more down those little crevices, right? Rather than just sitting on just sort of hitting the top surface, okay? So I find that really if you want to, I know it's a lot of work using that little point to cover this big piece of paper, but you kind of get a little more evenness of color when you got your pencil sharpened. So I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Now these pencil sharpeners work pretty good. They're pretty good about not breaking the tip off and they actually kind of stop once they've been sharpened. So, alright. So I'm going to use my orange. I'm now going to fill out a value scale like this one. Pick any color. Put down my lightest value. Put down something a little bit darker. Just increase in pressure. Now notice there's no white color pencil really that will do kind of what we just did. This white really is pretty useless, okay? If I took like this orange right here, I couldn't add white to it to get it that light of an orange, okay? It's really pretty useless. Kind of acts more like a blender than anything. So really color pencils is kind of like watercolor. I don't know if you've ever used watercolor, but watercolor doesn't have a white. You have to use the white of the paper to get your lighter colors, which is essentially what we just did. Now remember, white is also a neutral. It has no color, so is black and gray. They're really not even considered a color at all. They're just called a neutral. So by doing that, actually we have somewhat desaturated the orange by using the white of the paper. It's kind of bleached it, kind of washed it out. Now I'm going to go as dark as I can get this. Now orange is already pretty dark. We kind of established that orange is a dark color. So if I go press down on this pretty hard, I can do this pretty much without black with the values I've gotten down here so far. Now there's a problem with this. Okay, there's a big, big problem with this. If I tried to use that to do this, how do you think that would turn out? How do you think that would turn out? If I use this number 5 dark saturated bright orange in this kind of shadow area right here, what do you think would happen? If I use that number 5 really, really bright orange in my darkest area of this drawing, do you think that would look very realistic? No, it wouldn't. Because generally, remember, our shadow colors aren't very bright, okay? Shadow colors are dull, right? So that really just isn't going to quite cut it, okay? All right, so we're going to do this by adding black. So I'll go pale orange, another pale orange, a little brighter. Now let's go into these and start adding a little bit of black. All right. So black just is a complete neutral. Black is a complete neutral. And when you add it to orange, I mean, it just sucked the life out of it, okay? It's like that orange is now so desaturated. It's just still, I mean, we took one bland thing and we add another bland thing to it. Now we just got blandness, okay? It's just not very lively anything really going on there, okay? All right. All right, so let's go with analogous, okay? So anytime you mix a color together, it's going to dull it down a little bit. And so sometimes it's actually a little better on certain colors if you want to make it darker, actually add another color to it, okay, like yellow, okay? Anybody ever seen what yellow does when you add black to it? It looks bad, okay? So granted, we already established yellow is a very light color. What if we added something that's like yellow, like orange to it? Because analogous colors are colors that are side by side. Okay, we need to write that down. Okay, notice I have analogous right here. Right side by side. So colors that are side by side are analogous colors. So anybody want to tell me a color analogous to green? Blue. Or even blue-green. There's a blue-green right there. Some color schemes are analogous color schemes. They'll have like 3 colors. They might have a blue, blue-green, and green. That's considered like an analogous color scheme. Okay? All right. Now there are color schemes where you use opposites that are pure. Think about Christmas. Sometimes you want those bright colors, like things that are festive, like parties and birthdays and kids' toys and teams, like sport teams. Sport teams are usually bright colors, opposite complementary colors. So sometimes you want those bright colors for that. Okay? They do have their place. So we're going to take yellow. Now, orange is darker than yellow, right? So we're going to actually put down a little yellow. for pale yellow. Now we're going to put down a darker yellow, but it's kind of bright. So let's do this. Let's add just a touch of orange to that. Just a smidge, just to tone it down just a little bit. Now I'm putting down more yellow, and it just isn't going to get dark, is it? So this is where I can bring in, again, a little bit of my orange. Not completely changing the yellow. It is turning a little bit different color, but also is getting a little bit darker. Right? I'll go down a little bit further. Now this is where I might need to add a little bit of complement color to it, okay? So I put down a little bit of orange, and I put my yellow. Now I really want to dull this down a little bit. Now this is where our complementary comes in, okay? So grab purple. I'm going to add just a little bit of purple to that, just a little bit, okay? I go back with a little bit of yellow. So I'm not going to go as dark as black on the value scale, but hopefully you kind of can get the idea. How you can make like a darker version of yellow without making that dirty, dingy version. All right, so there is a nice yellow that kind of goes in a nice progression towards the darker. Now it starts to turn kind of a yellow-orange, but let me show you what the opposite of that would be. You don't have to do this, but I'm just going to do it here next to it. If I start to add a little bit of black to this, just notice what happens. I'm going to go down here, create this kind of yellow kind of value scale like this. Now watch what happens when I add black to this. Looks pretty yellow, but it's pretty dirty. It's kind of a greenish. Kind of version of the color, okay? So that's not that appealing. That's a little more appealing, okay? So we can also do something where we add a neutral to a color, which is generally what students might would do, okay? So let's pick a brown, okay? And then I'm going to go back to my orange, okay? Go back to my orange. Now I'm just going to use brown on this. And it looks okay. It doesn't look the best. It does add something to it. Now I'm doing this by kind of laying down orange over the whole thing first. Start to add a little bit of brown there, a little more brown here, a little more brown towards the bottom. Yes. Now I'm going to go back and use my orange to kind of layer on top to bring a little more color into it and also to kind of mix. Now, orange is really related to brown because to make brown, it's really an orange color. Orange and blue makes the best brown with some more orange than blue. Makes the best brown. Sort of your generic brown. I really like what happens though when you mix purple and orange together. Now remember, purple has blue in it, therefore it's also its complement to a certain degree, but also has red in it, so it's fairly related to orange too. And what you end up with is kind of rosy looking brown. Kind of what we call mauve. Okay, that's kind of a taupe color. So that's with adding brown to orange. So we've took something that was somewhat something that was a neutral and added to it to kind of dull it down. And that's all we're doing here. We're trying to do something different than that. Okay. This is the main thing we're trying not to do. All right. Just pure color. Nothing added to it. All of these at least have something added to it, okay? The last one is going to be the best one, okay? So the best for last. And that's going to be using our complement. Now this is where I'm going to use orange and blue, okay? So whatever color you have, pick up the opposite color, okay? If you have red, you're going to need green. If you have blue, you're going to need orange. If you have purple, you're going to need yellow. Whatever color you have, make sure you get the opposite, okay? All right, so starting out again. Very pale version of orange. No blue in this one. Why that paper is going to wash it out, bleach it out, neutralize it. Here's my color that's in the light, so it might be all orange, but it's also going to be a light version of orange, therefore it's not fully saturated. Remember, our brighter colors are next to the light, so this one gets nothing added. This is where we're going to start to add the blue. Okay, we're starting to get more into our shadow color. I'm going to add just a hint of blue to this, just a slight bit. This is in the value number 3. Add just a little bit. Now I'm going to come down, maybe mix a little bit more orange back on top of that. Going darker now, so I'm going to have to press harder. Now it's going to make a more saturated orange. So I'm going to have to put more blue on that one just to kind of desaturate and darken. And then lastly, I'm going to have to really press down on this get it really dark, but that's getting way too saturated, so I'm going to have to really lay that blue on it. Press down hard to make it really dark. And there we go. That's a winner. Okay? That's the one that works the most. Okay? If we use that on this assignment to do our shading, okay, and stick to that, it will have more an illusion, okay? You'll get those dull, desaturated colors in the shadow areas and keep the more saturated version in the lighter areas, okay? All right. Just going to pass out. All right, there's one last thing we want to do on this side of the paper. We might have finished just a little early, and that's to work on what if we have a big area to fill in, okay? What would look best and what would look worse, okay? So what I see a lot of times, and you can try this and just see yourself. Let's say if I was going to use orange. I was going to fill this all in. If I sit here and I start okay, I colored it. All right. It's not very appealing. Okay, it's bringing a lot of attention to itself, all those marks. Okay, that's because all those gaps in between, they're going these different directions. It's just not going to work well for our assignments. Also got gaps. This is one where you're going to need to color within the lines. Okay, that just ain't going to work. Okay. If we really want to fill in an area and do it nice and neat, make it filled in color, I try not to leave any gaps between my marks. I try to use a sharpened color pencil. And for this, I may even pull out my reading glasses so I can zoom in on it. And when when I have to do it kind of in rows because I can't make my color pencil, when I make these marks, go all the way across from side to side, it leaves a little darkened little band where they overlap. So I have to kind of try to work with that as well to kind of make that not stand out so much. And you can see this is a lot more work. It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more time. Once I get that initially filled in, then start to kind of really go back and fill in any voids. Try to make sure I got up to my lines nice and neat. Now this one isn't about color mixing. I'm just trying to show you how, if you want to fill in an area, make it a solid color. These are planes, remember? These are planes that we're working with. And we want to make them still keep that illusion of these planes. And we just want to make them solid areas of color and value. So you see how much neater that looks. Okay, does it bring too much attention to its marks versus this one? Okay, neatness is going to count. Okay, it's going to bring a lot more clarity to your work. It's going to make all those little planes that you have visible. There's a lot of little planes that you have that are really small, If you got this big texture like that, it's just they're gonna get lost. So you have to be really neat about this and try to keep that texture down of the marks. At this point, I'm just trying to make it about the same value as that. Now you can see how slow that was. It was like a slow buildup, you know, layering, just each time kind of smooth it out. Now it's kind of like glazing, you know, in paint. So that way you get this nice, consistent, smooth surface, okay? All filled in. All right. All right, so to recap things a little bit. We don't want just plain straight bright color on this. We are going to stick to a value scheme, you know, in terms of value scale. And also we're going to use complementary colors, or any colors, but particularly complementary colors to mix in with our colors, okay? If there's going to be any areas that get no color mixed in it, it might be your light areas because there's so much white of the paper that's going to be the thing that gets mixed in with the color, okay? So it's not like we're taking white here, mixing in with it, or mixing another color in with our lighter areas, just the white of the paper is. So you can see this is going to be a pretty dull project, you know, in terms of color. We can put a little bit of color in some places here and there, and that's going to be kind of in this light area here. That's where our lightest colors, but they're not going to be really dark, saturated colors, okay? All right. And that's all we're going to do for today, and we're going to save this part for next class, okay? So what you're going to need to do is once we're done with this, you're going to need to photograph this side. And once we're done with this, you're going to need to photograph this side and turn it in for your assignment, okay? So I did record this and a video,